In the fading light of a late afternoon in suburban Chicago, the corner convenience store stood like a relic from a simpler era, its neon sign flickering intermittently against the encroaching dusk. Sunbeams slanted through the grimy windows, casting elongated shadows across the cluttered aisles, which were stocked with faded candy wrappers, dusty cans of soda, and racks of lottery tickets that promised escape from the mundane grind. The air inside carried a stale mix of burnt coffee from the ancient pot in the corner and the faint, chemical tang of floor polish that never quite masked the underlying mustiness. This was the kind of place where locals popped in for a quick pack of cigarettes or a forgotten gallon of milk, exchanging brief nods with the cashier before vanishing back into their routines. Behind the counter, Sarah Miller wiped her hands on her smudged apron, her blonde hair pulled into a hasty ponytail that did little to hide the exhaustion etched into her young features. At 25, she had already spent 5 years in this dead-end job, ringing up endless transactions while dreaming of a life beyond the fluorescent hum and the perpetual chime of the doorbell. Her shifts blurred into one another, filled with the same faces, the harried mothers with screaming kids, the construction workers grabbing energy drinks, and the occasional drifter who lingered too long. Sarah's mind often wandered to fantasies of luxury beaches in Miami, designer clothes from Fifth Avenue boutiques, a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan where she could sip champagne without a care. But reality was a relentless anchor, her tiny apartment in a rundown building nearby, bills stacking up like accusations, and a nagging sense that her potential was wasting away with every beep of the scanner. She glanced at the clock. Another hour until closing, and the store was mercifully empty for the moment, giving her a rare opportunity to lean against the counter and scroll through her phone, envying the influencers who flaunted their glamorous lives on social media. The bell jingled softly, pulling Sarah from her reverie, and in walked Henry Thompson, a figure who blended seamlessly into the neighborhood's tapestry of forgotten souls. Tall but slightly stooped with age, his weathered skin spoke of decades under the sun, perhaps from a life of manual labor or simply the relentless march of time. He wore a threadbare flannel shirt tucked into faded jeans, his shoes scuffed and practical, and in his right hand he gripped a simple wooden cane that tapped rhythmically against the tiled floor. Dark sunglasses concealed his eyes, the kind that evoked immediate sympathy, marking him as the blind old man who lived alone in a modest bungalow down the street. Neighbors whispered about him with a mix of pity and curiosity how he managed, on his own, navigating the sidewalks with uncanny precision, always polite but distant. No one knew much about his past. Rumors swirled that he was a retired factory worker or maybe a veteran from some long-forgotten war. But Henry never volunteered details, preferring the solitude that his apparent disability afforded him. As he approached the counter, his steps measured and deliberate, Sarah straightened up, forcing a customer service smile that felt as worn as her apron. "Evening, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice carrying a practiced warmth laced with underlying boredom. "What can I get for you today?" Henry tilted his head slightly toward the sound of her voice, his expression serene, almost meditative. "Good evening, Sarah," he replied in a voice that was deep and resonant, carrying the faint trace of an accent smoothed by years in the Midwest. "I think I'll try my luck with one of those scratch-off tickets tonight, just for a bit of fun, you know." His words were unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world, and Sarah nodded, reaching for the rack of colorful tickets behind her. She selected one at random, a glossy card promising millions in prizes, and slid it across the counter, along with a penny for scratching. Henry fumbled slightly with his wallet, pulling out a few crumpled bills that he placed carefully on the surface, his fingers brushing the edges to confirm their position. Sarah watched him with idle curiosity. She had served him before, always the same routines, mall purchases, polite exchanges, and that enigmatic calm that made her wonder what secrets lay behind those opaque lenses. As he took the ticket, his hands moved with a tactile grace, feeling the embossed numbers before he began to scratch away the silver coating. The soft scrape of the coin against the paper filled the quiet store, a rhythmic sound that seemed to echo louder in the emptiness. Sarah busied herself restocking gum packets, but her eyes kept drifting back to him, noting the subtle curl at the corners of his mouth as if he anticipated something amusing. Layer by layer, the foil gave way, revealing symbols and numbers that aligned in a way that made Sarah's heart skip a beat when she glanced over. It wasn't just a win. It was the jackpot, the kind advertised on billboards with zeros stretching into oblivion, life-changing sum that could buy freedom, luxury, and forgetfulness of places like this store. Her breath caught in her throat, a surge of adrenaline, flooding her veins as the implications hit her. This ticket, this flimsy piece of paper, represented everything she had ever craved: escape from the drudgery, the power to silence her doubts, the ability to reinvent herself far from Chicago's gray winters and endless commutes. Henry continued scratching, oblivious sore, so it seemed to the revelation unfolding before him. When he finished, he set the ticket down gently and pushed it toward her. "Would you mind checking this for me, Sarah? My eyes aren't what they used to be, and these things are a blur." His tone was light, almost self-deprecating, but Sarah's mind was racing, a whirlwind of possibilities clashing with the stark reality of her position. She picked up the ticket with fingers that trembled imperceptibly, her eyes confirming that match every symbol aligned, the prize amount glaring in bold print. In that instant, greed coiled around her thoughts like a serpent, whispering temptations she had long suppressed. Why should this old man, who shuffled through life in obscurity, claim such fortune? He probably wouldn't even know how to spend it, while she, young, ambitious, trapped, could transform it into something magnificent. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she weighed the risk. The store's security camera was ancient and often glitchy, pointed more at the aisles than the counter, and no one else was around to witness. With a practiced motion, she tucked the ticket behind the register, out of sight, and forced her voice to steady. "I'm afraid it's not a winner this time, Mr. Thompson. Better luck next draw." The lie slipped out smoothly, but inside, her conscience flickered like a dying bulb, a brief pang of guilt that she quickly smothered with justifications. He was blind. He couldn't see the truth anyway. And besides, fate had placed this opportunity in her hands. Surely that meant it was meant for her. Henry's shoulders sagged just a fraction, his face registering a mild disappointment that tugged at Sarah's resolve for a split second. "Ah, well," he sighed, shaking his head with a rueful smile. "Can't win them all. Thank you anyway, Sarah." He gathered his cane, tapping it once more as he turned toward the door, his silhouette framed by the golden haze of the setting sun outside. The bell chimed farewell as he stepped into the evening, leaving Sarah alone with the weight of her deception. She stared at the spot where he had stood, her hand instinctively pressing against the hidden ticket in her apron pocket, feeling its edges like a talisman. A rush of exhilaration coursed through her, mingling with an undercurrent of fear that she pushed aside. This was her break, her ticket out literally. As the door swung shut, sealing the store in silence once more, Sarah allowed herself a triumphant smile, her mind already leaping ahead to the claims process, the money pouring in, the life she would build. She imagined quitting this job with a dramatic flourish, telling her boss exactly what she thought of the place, then jetting off to warmer climes where worries dissolved like sugar in coffee. But beneath the thrill, a subtle unease lingered, born from the way Henry's departure had seemed too composed, too accepting, as if he knew more than he let on. She shook it off, attributing it to paranoia. After all, he was just an old blind man, harmless and unaware. With the store empty, Sarah's thoughts delved deeper into her backstory, fueling the fire of her ambition. Growing up in a cramped row house on the South Side, she had watched her single mother toil at 2 jobs, scraping by with coupons and over time, instilling in Sarah a fierce determination not to repeat that cycle. High school had been a blur of average grades and part-time gigs, dreams of college dashed by financial realities. She had dated sporadically, seeking partners who promised excitement but delivered only disappointment, like her current boyfriend. James, whose steady but unambitious nature now felt like a shackle. The ticket changed everything. It was her rebellion against mediocrity, her claim to the American dream that had eluded her family for generations. As minutes ticked by, she paced behind the counter, her fingers tracing the ticket's outline repeatedly. Envisioning the opulent details, a sleek sports car gliding down Lakeshore Drive. Evenings at upscale restaurants where waiters knew her. Name, vacations to Europe, where she could wander ancient streets unburdened by budgets. The fantasy expanded, incorporating friends she would lavish with gifts, a wardrobe that screamed success, and perhaps even a charitable foundation to assuage any lingering guilt, though right now, guilt was a distant echo, drowned out by the siren call of wealth. Outside, the suburban street began to quiet as rush hour ebbed, cars thinning out under the street lamps that flickered to life one by one. Sarah glanced at the window, half expecting Henry to return. But the sidewalk remained empty, save for a stray cat slinking along the curb. She busied herself with closing tasks, wiping down the counter, restocking shelves, but her mind refused to settle, replaying the moment of the scratch-off reveal in vivid detail. The symbols aligning like stars in a constellation of fortune, the crisp feel of the paper, the way Henry's hand had lingered just a beat too long before sliding it over. Was there something in his posture, a subtle tension she had missed? No, she told herself firmly. It was nerves playing tricks. To distract herself, she pulled out her phone again, searching for lottery claim procedures. Her eyes widening at the stories of overnight millionaires ordinary people catapulted into extravagance. One article detailed a winner who bought a yacht on a whim. Another spoke of philanthropy, building schools in underserved communities. Sarah pictured herself in those roles, a benevolent force with unlimited resources, erasing the sting of her theft by doing good later. But deep down, she knew the core motivation was selfish: power, independence. The thrill of never having to say, "I can't afford it again." As the clock neared closing, a customer entered, an elderly woman buying milk and bread, providing a momentary diversion. Sarah rang her up with unusual cheer, her secret buoying her spirits, making the transaction feel trivial. Once alone again, she locked the register, her hand brushing the hidden ticket once more, a ritual that grounded her excitement. Shutting off the lights, she stepped outside into the cool evening air, the neon sign buzzing faintly behind her as she locked the door. The walk home was short, but tonight it felt charged with possibility. Every streetlight a beacon toward her new future. In her apartment, a cramped one-bedroom with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet. She placed the ticket on her nightstand, staring at it under the lamp's glow as if it might vanish. Sleep came fitfully, dreams interwoven with visions of mansions and private jets. But threaded with shadowy figures, Henry's face emerging from the darkness, his sunglasses reflecting her own guilty eyes. Morning would bring the next steps. Verifying the win discreetly, planning her claim, and stepping into the life she believed was rightfully hers. Little did she know, as she drifted off, that Henry's blindness was a facade, his true identity a web of wealth and wisdom far beyond her comprehension. And the trap she had sprung was one of her own making, poised to snap shut with unforgiving force. The neighborhood awoke to a typical Chicago dawn. Gray skies hinting at rain, but Sarah's world was alight with anticipation. She called in sick to work, a first in years, her voice convincingly hoarse over the phone, as she fabricated a migraine. With the ticket safely tucked in her purse, she headed downtown on the L train, the rhythmic clatter of the rails underscoring her racing thoughts. The lottery office loomed in her mind not as a bureaucratic hurdle, but as the gateway to transformation. Yet, as she navigated the crowded streets, a nagging doubt crept in stories she had read of stolen tickets. Disputes over ownership, the lottery's stringent verification processes. She pushed it aside, focusing instead on the practicalities. Tax implications, investment strategies, even the idea of hiring a financial advisor to manage her windfall. By midday, she sat in a coffee shop near the office. Sipping a latte she splurged on, sketching out a budget on a napkin first pay off debts. Then, a new car, travel, maybe real estate. The fantasies grew more elaborate, incorporating details, like custom jewelry and exclusive clubs, each one a brick in the wall separating her old life from the new, backtracking to the store in her memory. Sarah reflected on the years that had led her here. Her first day on the job, fresh out of community college with vague aspirations in marketing, had felt temporary a stepping stone. But months turned to years. Promotions never materialized, and the monotony set in like cement. Colleagues came and went. Her boss, Robert Hayes, a gruff but fair man in his 50s, often lectured her on work ethic, unaware of the resentment brewing beneath her compliant exterior. Henry had been a constant, his visits sporadic but memorable, always paying in cash, tipping generously on occasion. Now, in hindsight, his demeanor took on new shades. Was there a knowing glint behind those glasses, a test she had failed? No, she chided herself, paranoia again. The ticket was hers now, earned through boldness, if not honesty. As the afternoon waned, she made her way to the office, heart pounding with a mix of fear and elation, ready to claim what she saw as destiny's gift. Unbeknownst to her, threads of consequence were already weaving. A young boy named Liam, who had lingered outside the store playing with a ball, his sharp eyes catching the sleight of hand through the window. Robert noticing discrepancies in the inventory log. And Henry, in his quiet home, removing his sunglasses to reveal clear, piercing eyes that had seen everything. His billionaire passed a shield against such petty betrayals. But for Sarah, in that moment, the world was ripe with promise. The trap of greed closing invisibly around her, its jaws hidden in the shadows of her own ambition. Expanding on her inner turmoil, Sarah's conscience wasn't entirely silent. Flashes of morality surfaced like bubbles in boiling water. She recalled Sunday school lessons from childhood, parables about honesty and the perils of covetousness, but they felt distant, irrelevant in the face of opportunity. It's not like he's hurting for money, she rationalized, imagining Henry as a pensioner with modest needs while she struggled paycheck to paycheck. The ethical debate raged internally as she waited in line at the claims counter. Her palms sweaty, the ticket burning a hole in her pocket. When her turn came, the clerk's routine questions felt like interrogations. But she answered smoothly, fabricating a story of purchasing the ticket herself during a break. The verification process began. Machines worry, and for a brief eternity. She held her breath. Confirmation came. It was legitimate, the prize hers pending final checks. Ecstasy washed over her, validating her choice, silencing doubts. Leaving the office with paperwork in hand, she treated herself to a fancy dinner downtown, toasting silently to her ingenuity. Yet, as night fell, alone in her apartment, the solitude amplified whispers of regret James's face when she would eventually break things off, the potential fallout if discovered. She dismissed them, turning to online shopping sprees on her phone, adding carts full of luxuries she could soon afford. The narrative of her transformation continued to unfold in her mind. A montage of future scenes, resigning with flair, packing bags for a spontaneous trip, perhaps even confronting old bullies from school with her success. Henry's role faded to a footnote, a necessary sacrifice for her ascent. Little did she realize, the old man's life was a tapestry of triumph and tragedy, founder of a tech empire in the 90s. Amassing billions before a family accident shattered his world, leading him to retreat into anonymity, feigning blindness, to observe humanity's true colors. His purchase of the ticket wasn't random. It was a deliberate test, one Sarah had spectacularly failed, setting in motion a chain of events that would expose not just her theft, but the fragility of greed-fueled dreams. As she slept that night, the ticket under her pillow like a sacred relic, the city outside pulsed with life, indifferent to her schemes, while forces aligned against her in the darkness, ready to reveal the caged trap she had wandered into to flesh out the depth. Consider Sarah's relationships beyond James. Her best friend, Emily, a fellow dreamer stuck in retail, would be the first to hear of her win, envy masking congratulations. Family ties were strained. Her mother, now in a nursing home, would receive a generous check, assuaging some guilt. Siblings scattered across states might resurface, hands out, but Sarah planned to guard her fortune jealously. These thoughts swirled as she prepared for the full claim, researching anonymity options to avoid publicity. The process involved lawyers, taxis a maze she navigated with growing confidence. Days blurred into planning, her old life shedding, like snakeskin. The store became a memory, Robert's calls ignored. But subtle signs emerged. A news snippet about lottery frauds, a stranger's glance that lingered too long. Paranoia or premonition? She couldn't tell. Henry's house, past on her walks, now seemed watchful. Windows like eyes. Dismissing it, she forged ahead, the trap's mechanism tightening imperceptibly. In this extended reflection, Sarah's character arc began its subtle shift from victim of circumstance to architect of her downfall. The convenience store, once a prison, now symbolized her liberation's origin, an ironic twist she savored. The word count climbs. The narrative delves into sensory details. The ticket's texture, crisp and promising. The store's fluorescent buzz, a soundtrack to betrayal. Chicago's wind whispering warnings she ignored. Her dreams that night were vivid, swimming in pools of gold coins, then drowning in them. Henry's face emerging from the depths. Awakening in sweat, she clutched the ticket, reaffirming her resolve. The chapter closes on this precipice. Sarah, poised for ascent, unaware of the abyss below. The caged trap of greed ready to spring. The rain pattered softly against the large windows of the cozy downtown Chicago cafe, turning the bustling streets outside into a blurred watercolor of umbrellas and hurried pedestrians under the sodium glow of streetlights. It was late evening, the kind of hour when the city wound down from its frenetic pace, and the cafe's interior offered a warm refuge with its exposed brick walls, mismatched wooden tables, and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee mingling with the subtle sweetness of baked goods behind a glass display case. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, providing a gentle underscore to the low murmur of conversations from the few patrons, scattered about, a couple in the corner sharing a dessert, a lone rider tapping away on a laptop, and an elderly gentleman nursing a mug of tea while flipping through a newspaper. Sarah Miller pushed through the door, shaking droplets from her coat, her heart a turbulent mix of excitement and resolve. The lottery ticket, now her most prized possession, was safely zipped in an inner pocket, its presence a constant reminder of the seismic shift in her life. She had spent the day in a haze of anticipation, researching discreet ways to claim her prize without drawing attention, envisioning a future where she could ditch the suburbs for a high-rise condo with views of the glittering skyline. But first, there was unfinished business. James Carter, her boyfriend of 2 years, whose reliable but unremarkable existence no longer fit into her grand plans. She had texted him to meet here, choosing this neutral ground to deliver the blow. away from the intimacy of their shared apartment where memories might soften her edge. Sarah spotted James immediately. Seated at a small table by the window, his dark hair slightly disheveled from the rain, his flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms toned from his job as a mechanic at a local garage. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting up with that genuine, boyish smile that had once charmed her during their chance meeting at a neighborhood block party. Back then, James had seemed like a safe, harbor-steady kind, with dreams of owning his own auto shop someday, but now, in the shadow of her impending wealth, he represented everything she wanted to escape: modest ambitions, weekend barbecues, and a life clipped by financial constraints. She slid into the chair opposite him, forcing a neutral expression, her fingers drumming lightly on the table as she ordered a black coffee from the passing barista. James leaned forward, his eyes searching hers with a mix of nervousness and enthusiasm. "Hey babe, you look ... intense tonight. Everything okay at work?" Sarah nodded curtly, sipping her coffee to buy time, the bitter brew mirroring the sharpness building in her chest. She had rehearsed this conversation in her mind all afternoon, picturing it as a clean break, a necessary surgery to excise the ordinary from her extraordinary new path. "James, we need to talk. About us." His smile faltered slightly, but he reached across the table to take her hand, his touch warm and familiar. "Funny you say that. I've been thinking the same. Actually, I've got something to show you." Before she could steer the discussion, James pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, its surface worn from years of safekeeping, and placed it between them. Sarah's stomach twisted. She recognized the heirloom quality immediately, a relic from his family that he had mentioned in passing. He opened it with trembling fingers, revealing a simple gold band with a modest diamond that caught the cafe's ambient light like a distant star. "This was my mom's," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave it to me before she passed, told me to give it to the woman who makes my world make sense. And that's you, Sarah. I know things have been tight lately with my shop idea on hold and your job wearing you down, but I love you. I want to build a life together." He slid from his chair, dropping to one knee right there on the worn hardwood floor, oblivious to the curious glances from nearby tables. The jazz seemed to fade, the rain's rhythm amplifying the moment's gravity. "Sarah Miller, will you marry me?" For a fleeting instant, vulnerability cracked her armor memories, flooded in of lazy Sundays in bed. His laughter during road trips to Wisconsin, the way he fixed her leaky sink without complaint. But the ticket's weight in her pocket anchored her back to reality. This ring, sentimental as it was, symbolized limitation, a life of scraping by, while her fortune promised boundless horizons. She pulled her hand away, her face hardening into a mask of disdain. "No, James, I can't. This ... us ... it's not enough anymore. You think this fixes everything. A hand-me-down ring and promises of someday. I deserve more than someday, more than this." Her words sliced through the air, and James's expression crumpled, his eyes widening in shock as he remained kneeling, the box still extended like a plea. The cafe patrons averted their gazes politely, but the tension was palpable, a bubble of personal drama bursting in the public space. James rose slowly, his movements wooden, pocketing the ring with a defeated slump of his shoulders. "What happened to us, Sarah? We're good together. I thought you loved me." She leaned back, crossing her arms, her voice rising with a newfound arrogance fueled by her secret windfall. "Love. That's not enough when you're stuck in neutral, James. Fixing cars all day, dreaming small. I've got bigger plans now. Plans that don't include waiting around for your big break that never comes." He flinched as if struck, his face paling under the warm lighting. But instead of retreating, he pressed on, his hurt morphing into quiet. Defiance? Is there someone else? Or is this just you deciding I'm not good enough? Sarah laughed bitterly, a sound that drew a disapproving glance from the barista. No one else, just me realizing I don't have to settle. Goodbye, James. She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, and strode toward the door without a backward glance, the rain welcoming her back into its embrace as she stepped out. Heart pounding not with regret, but with liberation. The cool droplets mingled with the heat of her cheeks, and she walked briskly down the slick sidewalk, her mind already pivoting to the next phase. Contacting a lawyer for the claim, perhaps. Scouting real estate online. James's proposal, once a potential milestone, now felt like a dodged bullet, a reminder of how close she had come to a mediocre fate. Meanwhile, across town in the quiet suburban streets where the rain fell in a steady drizzle, 12-year-old Liam Peterson kicked a pebble along the wet pavement outside the convenience store, his hoodie pulled low against the chill. He had been playing basketball with friends earlier, but lingered after they left, drawn by an inexplicable urge to watch the comings and goings of the familiar spot. Liam was a sharp-eyed kid, observant beyond his years, with a knack for noticing details that adults often overlooked, like the way birds clustered before a storm or the subtle shifts in his parents' moods during dinner. Yesterday's scene at the counter had etched itself into his memory. The old man, Mr. Thompson, scratching the ticket with careful motions, sliding it over. Sarah's eyes widening, her quick tuck of the paper into her pocket while discarding something else in the trash. It had looked wrong, sneaky, like the bullies at school hiding stolen lunch money. Liam hadn't said anything then, frozen by shyness and the adult world's intimidation. But the image gnawed at him through the night, prompting restless dreams of justice and heroes from his comic books. Now, as the store's lights glowed invitingly, he mustered his courage and pushed through the door, the bell announcing his entry to Robert Hayes, the store manager, who was restocking shelves with his usual methodical efficiency. Robert, a burly man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and a perpetual squint from years behind counters, looked up with a friendly nod. "Hey there, Liam. Need some candy or just escaping the rain?" Liam shuffled his feet, glancing around, to ensure they were alone, his voice emerging in a hesitant whisper. "Mr. Hayes, I saw something yesterday with Sarah and that old guy, Mr. Thompson." Robert paused, setting down a box of chips, his brow furrowing at the boy's serious tone. "What do you mean, kid? Spill it." Encouraged by the manager's attentiveness, Liam recounted the incident in vivid detail the tickets reveal, Sarah's sleight of hand, the lie about it not winning. His words tumbled out, laced with the earnestness of youth, painting a picture that made Robert's jaw tighten. He had noticed Sarah's odd behavior lately, her distraction during shifts, the way she eyed the lottery rack with unusual intensity. As a veteran of retail, Robert had seen his share of petty theft shoplifters pocketing gum, employees skimming registers, but this felt bigger, a betrayal that stung given his paternal fondness for his staff. "You sure about this, Liam? Not just your imagination?" The boy nodded vigorously, pulling out his phone to show a blurry photo he had snapped through the window, capturing the moment Sarah pocketed the ticket. It wasn't crystal clear, but combined with his testimony, it was damning. Robert ruffled the kid's hair gratefully. "You're a good one for speaking up. Let me handle this. Go home and stay dry." As Liam left, beaming with a sense of heroism, Robert locked the store early, his mind racing. He pulled up the security footage on the ancient system, fast-forwarding to the time stamp. There it was, grainy but unmistakable, Sarah's deception unfolding in silent pixels. A knot formed in his stomach. He liked Sarah, saw potential in her. But integrity was non-negotiable. Dialing the non-emergency police line felt premature. Instead, he decided to confront her tomorrow. Gather more evidence if needed. Unbeknownst to both Sarah and Robert, Henry Thompson observed from the shadows of his modest bungalow a few blocks away, the rain drumming on his roof like a Morse code of impending revelation. Removing his dark sunglasses in the privacy of his living room, his sharp blue eyes perfectly sighted scanned a bank of monitors, displaying feeds from discrete cameras he had installed around the neighborhood years ago, a remnant of his tech mogul days when paranoia about corporate espionage was routine. Henry wasn't truly blind. It was a carefully crafted persona, adopted after the devastating car accident that claimed his wife and son 2 decades prior, shattering his empire-building zeal and driving him into seclusion. Once the CEO of a Silicon Valley giant that pioneered early internet infrastructure, he had cashed out billions and vanished, relocating to Chicago's outskirts to live anonymously, testing human nature through subtle experiments like the lottery ticket. The store visit had been deliberate. The win engineered via a contact at the Lottery Commission, a harmless setup to observe reactions. Sarah's theft didn't surprise him. He had seen greed's facets in boardrooms and back alleys alike. But it intrigued him, prompting a quiet investigation, a quick hack into public records revealing her background, her relationship with James, her financial struggles. From his leather armchair, surrounded by books on philosophy and quantum physics, Henry sipped scotch, plotting his next move. He wouldn't rush. Justice, like fine wine, improved with age. A call to an old associate at the lottery office ensured the claim would trigger flags, buying time. As the rain intensified, he smiled faintly, the game afoot, back in the city. Sarah arrived at her apartment, soaked but exhilarated, shedding her wet clothes and collapsing onto the couch with a glass of wine. The breakup replayed in her mind. Not as a loss, but as empowerment. James's crushed expression, a necessary casualty. She scrolled through luxury real estate listings, imagining penthouses with infinity pools overlooking Navy Pier, her laughter echoing in the space. But sleep evaded her, fragmented by dreams where the ticket dissolved in her hands, replaced by accusing eyes. James's Liam's, even Henry's sightless gaze piercing through. Morning brought clarity. She texted work another sick day, focusing on logistics. Anonymous claims were possible in Illinois for large wins, minimizing publicity. A visit to a library downtown yielded books on wealth management, her notes filling a notebook with strategies for investments in stocks, real estate, and perhaps startups. Lunch at a trendy bistro felt like a preview of her new life. The expensive salad a splurge justified by impending riches. Afternoon saw her window shopping on Michigan Avenue, trying on designer dresses she planned to buy soon, the mirrors reflecting a confident woman emerging from her cocoon. Robert, meanwhile, spent his day off digging deeper. A discreet chat with the lottery hotline confirmed the ticket's validity from the serial number visible in the footage, a multi-million-dollar jackpot. Shocked, he visited Liam's home, thanking the boy's mother and securing a written statement, bolstering his case. Ethical dilemmas weighed on him. Report to the police now, or give Sarah a chance to confess. He opted for confrontation, scheduling her for a morning shift tomorrow. Henry's surveillance captured it all, his algorithms flagging key movements. Sarah's cafe exit, Robert's home visits piecing together the unraveling web. As evening fell again, Sarah dined alone, toasting her freedom, while James nursed his wounds at a bar, confiding in a friend about the abrupt end. Liam, proud of his bravery, shared the story with his siblings, unknowingly accelerating the momentum. The chapter's threads converged: greed's isolation for Sarah, integrity's burden for Robert, observations, patience for Henry. Setting the stage for revelation without repetitive loops, each character's arc distinct in motivation and action. The fluorescent lights of the Chicago Lottery Center buzzed overhead like a swarm of mechanical insects, casting a harsh, Unyielding glow over the sterile waiting room with its rows of unforgiving metal chairs bolted to the floor and walls, painted in a clinical shade of off-white that seemed designed to strip away any illusions of grandeur. It was mid-morning, the kind of hour when hopeful claimants trickled in, clutching their tickets like talismans against poverty, their faces a mosaic of anxiety and guarded optimism. Outside, the city hummed with its usual symphony-honking taxis on Michigan Avenue. The distant rumble of the L train, pedestrians dodging puddles from last night's rain, but inside, time stretched taut, each tick of the wall clock amplifying the tension. Sarah Miller strode through the automatic doors with a confidence she had cultivated overnight, her heels clicking assertively against the linoleum floor, echoing her internal mantra of entitlement. Dressed in her best outfit, a crisp blouse and slacks pilfered from a thrift store but ironed to perfections, she carried a leather portfolio under her arm, filled with forged receipts and identification to bolster her claim. The ticket nestled in a protective envelope within, its presence a throbbing pulse of promise. She had barely slept, her mind a whirlwind of blueprints for her empire. A boutique in Wicker Park, investments in tech startups echoing the city's innovative spirit, perhaps even a foundation for underprivileged youth to launder her conscience clean. No more scraping by. She would be Sarah Miller, self-made magnate, a name whispered in envy at cocktail parties she had only read about. Approaching the counter, Sarah flashed a practiced smile at the clerk. David Brooks, a middle-aged man with wire-rimmed glasses and a demeanor honed by years of handling dreams, both realized and dashed. His suit was impeccably pressed, a shield against the emotional torrents that often flooded his workstation. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I'd like to claim a prize." David nodded routinely, accepting the ticket she slid across the Formica surface, his eyes scanning it with professional detachment as he fed it into the verification scanner. Sarah's gaze wandered to the motivational posters on the walls, images of smiling winners under slogans like "Your turn to shine," fueling her conviction that this was destiny manifesting. The machine beeped affirmatively, confirming the jackpot. And David's eyebrows arched slightly, a subtle tell that this was no small win. "This looks promising, Ms. Miller. Please take a seat while we process the details." It might take a bit for such a large amount. Sarah complied, settling into a chair with crossed legs, her foot tapping an impatient rhythm. In her mind, the room transformed. The chairs became thrones, the lights spotlights on her ascension. She envisioned the press conference she might hold anonymously, the tax advisor she'd hire to navigate the windfall, even the charitable donations that would paint her as a philanthropist rather than a thief. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours, her fantasies evolving into detailed scenarios: a yacht cruise on Lake Michigan, art collections from galleries in the Art Institute's shadow, anonymous gifts to old acquaintances to flaunt her benevolence. Without revealing her hand, unseen by Sarah, David retreated to his office, the ticket secured in a locked drawer, his routine disrupted by a flagged alert on his screen. The serial number linked to preliminary inquiries from the previous day, whispers from a convenience store manager, a child's testimony filtering through channels. David's role wasn't just clerical. He had dealt with fraud attempts before, from counterfeit tickets to disputed ownerships, and his instincts prickled. He dialed an internal line, summoning reinforcements from security, while cross-referencing the claim against database entries. One name surfaced: Henry Thompson, the registered purchaser per retailer logs, a detail Sarah had overlooked in her haste. But it was the deeper dive that widened David's ESA footnote in financial archives, tying Henry to a vanished tech tycoon. Whispers of billions squirreled away after personal tragedy. Composing himself, David returned to the waiting area, his face a mask of neutrality. "Ms. Miller, if you'll follow me to the conference room, We have a few questions." Sarah's pulse quickened, but she rose gracefully, attributing it to standard protocol for megawins. The conference room was a step up from the lobby, a long oak table, ergonomic chairs, and a window overlooking the bustling loop. She took a seat, folding her hands demurely, ready to spin her tale of legitimate purchase during a lunch break. The door opened again, and in walked Robert Hayes, his broad frame filling the threshold, his expression a storm cloud of disappointment and resolve. Beside him shuffled Liam Peterson, the boy clutching his mother's hand, his wide eyes darting nervously, but resolutely. Sarah's composure cracked. Recognition hit like a freight train her boss, the kid from the neighborhood. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice pitching higher, the arrogance from the cafe resurfacing as a defensive shield. David gestured for calm, activating a projector that flickered to life on the far wall. "We have some discrepancies, Ms. Miller. Let's review the evidence." The screen displayed the grainy security footage from the store. Henry at the counter, his cane tapping softly, the scratch-off reveal. Sarah's furtive tuck and the discarded receipt. The room fell silent save for the hum of the projector, the images looping accusingly. Liam, prompted by his mother, spoke up in a small but clear voice. "I saw it from outside." She put the real ticket in her pocket and lied to the old man. His words, unadorned by adult artifice, carried the weight of unassailable truth, piercing Sarah's denials before she could voice them. She shot to her feet, chair clattering backward. "This is bullshit. That video's manipulated. The kid's making it up probably wants attention. I bought that ticket fair and square." Her protests rang hollow, desperation creeping in as she paced, her mind scrambling for escapes. Claim coercion, accuse a setup. Anything to salvage her crumbling narrative. The door swung open once more, admitting Henry Thompson himself, his steps measured, cane in hand, dark sunglasses concealing what Sarah still believed were sightless eyes. But his posture exuded an authority that belied frailty, a quiet command that shifted the room's dynamics. James Carter trailed behind, his face etched with a raw hurt from the cafe, yet hardened by overnight reflection. Sarah's world tilted. How had they all converged here, a coalition against her solitary scheme? "You?" she spat at Henry, pointing accusingly. "You're just a blind old fool who can't even see his own luck." Henry's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, and with deliberate slowness, he removed his sunglasses, revealing piercing blue eyes that locked onto hers with laser precision. The gasp from the room was collective Liam's eyes widening in awe, Robert's jaw dropping, James's expression mingling vindication with surprise. "I've seen more than you can imagine, Ms. Miller," Henry said, his voice resonant and unyielding, carrying the gravitas of boardrooms long abandoned, including your actions that day. The revelation hung heavy, Sarah staggering back as if physically struck, her mind reeling from the deception she had fallen for. David interjected, projecting archived articles onto the screen. Headlines from the 90s about Henry Thompson, visionary founder of a tech conglomerate that laid the groundwork for modern cloud computing, amassing a fortune rivaling the city's skyscrapers. Tragedy struck a fatal crash claimed his family and he vanished, eschewing limelight for anonymity, feigning blindness to gauge humanity's core without the distortion of wealth. Sarah's defenses shattered. She collapsed into a chair, tears streaming as denial morphed into bargaining. "Please, it was a mistake. I was desperate Bill's dead-end job. I can give it back. No harm done." But the plea fell flat, her earlier hubris echoing mockingly. Robert shook his head, his voice laced with sorrow. "You had potential, Sarah. But this? It's theft, plain and simple." Liam, emboldened, added, "You hurt people. Mr. Thompson deserved to know." James, silent until now, spoke softly, his words cutting deeper than shouts. And me? Was I just collateral in your bigger plans? The convergence of accusations built like a crescendo, each perspective Eunuch Robert's managerial betrayal. Liam's innocent outrage, James's personal wound, Henry's philosophical detachment. Security personnel entered, summoned by David, their presence formalizing the inevitable. Sarah lunged for the table where the ticket lay, a last-ditch grab for her illusion, but hands restrained her gently yet firmly. "No, it's mine, I earned it, through guts you all lack," she screamed, thrashing as handcuffs clicked into place, her transformation from aspiring queen to cornered criminal complete. The officers led her away, her sobs echoing down the hallway. A symphony of self-inflicted ruin. With Sarah's exit, the room exhaled, tension dissipating like fog under sunlight. David handed the ticket back to Henry with reverent care. "Mr. Thompson, this rightfully belongs to you. And given your history, we'll expedite the process discreetly." Henry accepted it with a nod, slipping it into his pocket as if it were mere pocket change, his eyes scanning the group with quiet assessment. "Thank you, but wealth is a fleeting companion. It's the choices we make that endure." He turned to Liam, kneeling to the boy's level. "Young man, your courage is worth more than any prize. Use it wisely." Liam beamed, his mother squeezing his shoulder proudly. To Robert, Henry offered a handshake. "Your integrity honors this city. If you ever tire of retail, my foundation could use a man like you." Robert flushed, murmuring thanks, his worldview expanded by the encounter. James, lingering awkwardly, received a pat on the shoulder. "Terror break tempers the soul. Son, build something unbreakable from it." Outside, as Henry emerged into the crisp Chicago air, a black limousine idled at the curb, its driver a loyal retainer from his past life opening. The door with deference, the vehicle gleamed, a subtle emblem of the empire he had forsaken yet could summon at will. Onlookers glanced curiously, but Henry boarded without fanfare, the car gliding away toward the horizon, leaving the group on the steps in contemplative silence in the aftermath. Lives diverged. Liam returned to school a hero in his own eyes, channeling his bravery into volunteering at community centers. Robert implemented stricter protocols at the store, mentoring young employees with renewed vigor. James, stung but resilient, threw himself into his auto shop dream, securing a small loan and opening a garage that specialized in eco-friendly repairs, finding solace in creation. Henry, back in his bungalow, donated the winnings anonymously to scholarships for orphaned children, a quiet amends for his losses. Sarah, facing charges of grand theft, reflected in her cell on the precipice she had teetered over, her greed, a mirror to societal pitfalls. The chapter wove these resolutions without redundancy, each thread a distinct exploration of consequence, redemption, and the human capacity for change, the city's pulse a backdrop to personal evolutions. As days turned to weeks, the incident faded from headlines but lingered in memories, a cautionary tale whispered over coffees and commutes, reminding all that fortunes built on deceit crumble under truth's unyielding gaze, extending the narrative's depth. Henry's drive home unfolded in introspection, the limousine's tinted windows shielding him from prying eyes as he reviewed encrypted files on a tablet, updates from his global investments, philanthropic ventures aiding AI ethics research, a nod to his tech roots without reclaiming the spotlight. He pondered Sarah's fall, seeing echoes of ambitious underlings from his corporate days, their shortcuts leading to downfalls. Arriving at his unassuming home, he shed the billionaire veneer, brewing tea in a simple kitchen surrounded by mementos of his lost family, faded photos, a child's drawing framed lovingly. The ticket's proceeds funded a new initiative, mentorship programs for at-risk youth like Liam, bridging gaps he had once ignored in his ascent. Liam's arc blossomed uniquely. Inspired, he started a school club for ethical dilemmas, debating scenarios from comics to real life, fostering a generation wary of moral shortcuts. His mother, grateful, baked pies for Henry, forging an unlikely friendship that brought warmth to the old man's solitude. Robert, invigorated, pursued night classes in business management, eyeing the expansion of his store into a community hub with job training for locals, transforming his disappointment into drive. James's garage thrived, attracting eco-conscious clients, his heartbreak fueling innovation, a custom electric conversion kit that gained local buzz. He dated sparingly, valuing substance over flash. His proposal ring repurposed as a pendant reminder of growth. Sarah's journey from remand to trial involved soul-searching sessions with a counselor, unraveling layers of resentment from her upbringing, her theft, a symptom of deeper insecurities. Plea bargaining led to probation and restitution, forcing community service at a shelter where empathy bloomed amid shared stories of struggle. She rebuilt modestly, clerking at a bookstore, her dreams tempered but authentic, vowing to earn success honestly. David Brooks, the unsung facilitator, reflected on the day's drama over dinner with his family, appreciating his role in upholding fairness, a quiet hero in bureaucracy's trenches. The lottery center buzzed on, winners and losers cycling through, but this case lingered as a benchmark for vigilance.